All right, we are going live. Hello, happy Friday. Welcome everyone to another installment of Get a Clue in 52 for coaches, myself included. Let's see, Sue is here. Let me get her into. There we go. Hi, Sue. How are you? Happy
Hi,
Friday.
Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for coming. This is a big week. Oh my goodness. I'm like stumbling over the enormity of today's tip. So let me just get into it as quickly as I can because I think I'm gonna go for it. Here's what I'm getting at. Get a Clue in 52. By now, you know, is a series of tips books. This is my third one. It started with the original Get a Clue in 52 back in 2019. Made a bunch of mistakes, but I read each tip every Sunday night, found the mistakes, corrected them to this version right here, which is available on Amazon. The 5 categories for this version are communication, networking, marketing, sales, and accountability. That was cool. Then I partnered with a client colleague and we did a co-authored project, the Entrepreneur Edition, with my friend and yours, Vipul Dayal. And all of those categories, the 5 were about being an entrepreneur. It was business acumen, business ownership, personal branding, leadership, and influence, and then finally work-life balance. So when I got to this year, I wanted to make more contributions in the coaching space. And I'm currently vice president of communication for the San Diego Professional Coaches Alliance after being interim executive director of California Coaches to facilitate the merger between the organizations. And this is a year where I'm contributing, giving back what I can, where I can to this profession, this endeavor, this thing called coaching. And we're into almost the middle of the year now, right? And tip 24 today. So the 5 sections in this version of Get a Clue in 52 are all about being a coach, building a coaching practice, right? So the first section that we went over, I think I had 11 tips in this section, was self-promotion. We become a coach and we start letting the world, we tell ourselves we're a coach and then we tell the world that we can coach, right? Are a coach, can coach. But then the second section of the book was about engagement. How do we get people engaged in our coaching? How do we get permission to lead others? How do we sell our coaching services and packages? How do we enroll people in coaching sessions? And a lot of that was centered around the 2 complementary coaching session process that I developed way back when in 2007, 8, 9, when I was learning how to coach and build a practice and make an income as a coach. I figured out how to offer 2 complementary coaching sessions, and that was a difference maker for me. And so we talked a lot about that and how it can make a difference for you. And now we're in the third section of the book. So chronologically, it's like we promote ourselves as a coach and then we start to acquire clients. And now we got to serve. Now we actually have to deliver coaching. So the formula there is motivation plus accountability equals results. That's my formula for coaching. Get people engaged and then provide motivation plus accountability and they'll get the results. So we are in the section on motivation. There's 10 tips here that we're providing in motivation. And it started with an overview of the outcomes, that the 6 outcomes that we want to keep in mind when we're providing any sort of motivational leadership or coaching or mentoring, etc. There's 6 outcomes that if we can achieve any one of them, we're going to win. And if we can achieve all 6 of them, whoa, we're gold. And then the second tip in this section was we want tools in our toolbox, right? Because when we're motivating people, we either got to give them strategy, tactics, and resources, or we got to do a checkup from the neck up and get them out of their own way. So we want a lot of tools, a lot of strategy, a lot of know-how in our toolbox. So we want emotional tools to help people understand the drivers of their inner psychology, where they're in balance or out of balance, emotional fulfillment wise, or in pain or pursuing pleasure emotionally. We want to understand tools to support people emotionally. And of course, tip number 23, which we got into last week, was physical tools. I mean, health is such a huge piece of all of our lives. I always like to say you can't build a mansion on top of quicksand. So all the strategies that I have for somebody in sales, marketing, operations, team building, appreciative inquiry, be a likable boss, conduct a performance review, develop your public speaking acumen, all of those strategies and soft skills that we deliver to people, they're going to fall if there's not a solid health base there. If you're sick, if you're distracted, if you're fatigued, if you're in pain, if you're, right? If you're not vital, if you're not feeling vital, then what are the chances of you executing a new strategy and embracing vulnerability and having discipline and willpower and sacrifice if your health isn't right? So we talked a lot about health principles last week, and specifically the 6 principles. It ends with getting to rest peacefully. But if we want to rest peacefully, there's 5 things that we can pay attention to ahead of that. Our thoughts, what we eat, how we breathe, if we exercise, what we're drinking. And if we have slight adjustments or better decisions or more discipline across any of those 5, when we finally lay down to rest, instead of spinning our wheels and fits and starts and fidgety sleep and worrying and on, we will actually get to the rest that we need, get into deep REM, let our body replenish and heal itself, and off we go. So that's a review. And we're in today a huge area. I mean, relationships, right? So, I mean, it's funny, Stu, like, the usual suspects. It's so funny when you ask somebody in a coaching, well, what do you want? What are the areas? What are the things that need to be different? Health, relationships, and finance. One of those three are going to show up in everybody's top three, right? Unless we're totally actualized and on. So the relationships, it's just relationships affect every aspect of our life, career, business, right? And I'm pretty lucky. I should say I'm pretty lucky because I've got some really good relationships all around me, everywhere I look, from family to friends to colleagues to mentees to students to, like, I feel rich in this area. Like, I feel like a gazillionaire when it comes to relationships: deep, lasting, connected, authentic, genuine, vulnerable, committed, loyal, loving relationships. I mean, it's my thing. So without any further ado, I will, when I start reading this word for word, and, like, by the way, I'm going for it because this might be one of the longest tips in the whole book. As a matter of fact, this one tip probably got 15,000 tips inside of it. I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to read it because I like the idea of just voicing every single word in this book. By the time I'm done with the year, I want to be able to say, hey, you know what? I read every single word of this book out loud on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, etc. And it makes for good recordings, perhaps, and good transcripts. And what can AI do with these recordings once Joey gets his hands on them? Coach Joey's on board now. Shout out to Coach Joey, my good friend. Another fantastic relationship that means the world to me. So here we go. Stu, before I get into it, because once I get into it, I got to stay committed. So before I get into it, let me take a deep breath now. I've already had my morning coffee. I'm looking, there's no coffee here. I got a bottle of water or something. But let me just say thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And do you have any comments, questions? Have you read ahead on this tip? Is there anything that you can sprinkle into this before I start my word for word read? Because when I start my word for word read, I have to stay committed to it because this is a long tip. There's a lot here.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a long tip. I think there's a lot in it, and just do it.
Okay, well, stay here with me. You've got the book in front of you, so if I start to cry and get emotional because I'm less than a month away from my first son moving out of the house, and I'm so grateful for my wife and my kids, and I'm such an emotional fuzzball, right? Like, when I start reading these things, it's going to trigger all of the hard work that it takes to build and maintain relationships. So I'm already getting myself all worked up emotionally. Here we go. Ready? All right. Page 96, if you're following at home, Get a Clue in 52. 4 coaches, myself included. Again, I'm trying to contribute to the industry, but I've got a long way to go myself. I mean, 17, 18 years in, I've got a lot of success under my belt, but I have a lot to learn. I have a lot of growth. And I'm just happy to make this contribution. Here we go. Tip number 24, relationship tools, in the section on motivation. It breaks my heart when clients are struggling in their relationships, except for the confidence I have that coaching can help. Let's be clear that while the term relationships in coaching can include in-laws, parenting, colleagues, coworkers, superior subordinates, business partners, siblings, neighbors, community members, and everything on the continuum from acquaintance to BFF, as well as romantic partnership relationships. The tools I'm summarizing below are focused mostly on the latter form, except for the communication modules, which help us with all relationships and just about everything else we want as well. Of course, it is worth repeating that nothing below, or nothing that follows as I read, is meant to take the place of a marriage and family counselor or professional therapy. Let me say that again. Nothing I'm about to say is intended to take the place of a marriage and family counselor or professional therapy. And as with all of the tips in this book, the totality of tools I summarize below are nowhere near the totality of tools it may take to achieve ideal resolution for the myriad of problems people struggle with in their relationships. What follows simply are my tools when working on relationships with clients. Sometimes these tools help solve it. Other times they simply ready the client to solve it with a different professional and who has better tools. In every case, though, I'm able to help clients see, know, understand, feel, consider things that they previously could not. And that is always the first step to making changes. Here we go. Attraction. This is where it all starts. Somehow, some way, or perhaps via several hows in many ways, people are attracted to each other. In 2 words, opposites attract. It is important to understand the fundamental ways opposite people attract one another to be able to contrast and distinguish attraction from compatibility. Ultimately, to help clients understand that attraction and compatibility are not the same thing, and especially that one does not guarantee the other. More on compatibility in a minute. Here's a breakdown on opposites that attract. First of all, masculine versus feminine, sexual energy. Once again, you are a Google search away from lots of information on the differences between masculine and feminine energy. It would not suffice simply to say that gender is not the same thing as sex, or as it pertains to sexual energy. Male does not necessarily equal masculine, nor female feminine. Most people know that, but do not go further to evaluate their own or partner's energy when it comes to the ability of a relationship to fulfill needs, or what even counts as realistic when it comes to expectations in the relationship. This is one big area where the very thing that attracts two people, polarity of sexual energy, can present compatibility challenges for other areas of the relationship: breadwinning, homemaking, parenting, etc. 2, pheromones. Fighting the temptation to write pages on this topic, let me simply say that our body odors are a function of our immune systems. Body odor acts both to attract and repel in the process of mate selection. We detect pheromones through the olfactory senses in our noses. It's not a conscious phenomena, and there is no overt aroma. It is, but when we get close to people, we can usually tell right away if they smell good to us or not. Sometimes we must wait until the cologne or perfume wears off, or until the morning when the breath should be bad, to know if a person smells good or bad to us naturally. From the perspective of survivability of the species, when people with different immune systems reproduce, the offspring draw from each parent to be better positioned for survivability, whereas people with similar immune systems will be less fertile to each other and have a much harder time producing healthy children. To quote, get off, people will proceed in intimacy with people that do not necessarily smell good or wonderful to them. To be secure, people will stay in relationships that are wildly unfulfilling sexually, or with whom they cannot produce children without procedures or test tubes, and on and on. Conversely, some people smell so good to each other that whether they should be together in a committed relationship is less of a concern in the moment, that they cannot keep their hands off each other. Great sex doesn't guarantee a good relationship, and a strong commitment cannot change the way someone naturally smells. You hear the Kluby snacks there? Awesome. Next, we're still in attraction. Opposites attract. Third area of understanding attraction is DISC, or behavioral styles. I referred to assessments in the tip on winning enrollment conversations. I always include a set of behavioral assessments on the intake of a client into coaching, because in any area of coaching, including relationships, they present an objective view of behavior and a clear path to workable strategies. The DISC assessment measures our instincts and adaptations when it comes to 4 areas of behavior: solving or ignoring problems, trusting or distrusting people, setting or adopting pace of our environment, and following, ignoring procedure, to put it simply. A safe assumption I bring to relationship coaching is that there will be at least one main polarity in the partner's DISC. A high D is usually attracted to a low D. A high I is usually attracted to a low I, and so forth. When there is polarity, partners constantly demonstrating behaviors that are instinctually not what the other person would do. Enter argument here. Conversely, when there is overlap, 2 high C's or 2 low S's, some things in the relationship don't get done at all, while others are being doubled up on or headbutted over. Enter lack of balance here. All right, so let me take a deep breath and just summarize real quick that when we're talking about attraction, it's the first door that I knock on when I want to help people understand and start imagining what the problems might be, what the challenges might be in their relationship. So we're talking about attraction first. Opposites attract. 3 major ways that opposites attract. Number 1 is behavioral style. 2 is pheromones, natural odor, and 3 is sexual energy, masculine and feminine energy. Those 3 polarities will bring people together, but that says nothing about compatibility, which we want to start to talk about now. Here we go. Compatibility. I see attraction as the power or polarity that brings things together, and compatibility as the power of vulnerability that keeps things together. Kluby snack. In my opinion, the former, attraction, is rather automatic, while what follows takes more awareness, effort, honesty, negotiation, and perhaps sacrifice. Here are the areas I help clients look to when evaluating compatibility in their relationships. Number one, motivators. Another assessment that I run packaged with DISC is a motivators assessment. Unlike DISC that measures behavioral style, the motivators measures interests, attitudes, and values. It assumes we all want 7 categories of things, motivators, and then helps us see a ranking for which among them we are most passionate. Someone who values efficiency may never truly understand someone who values perfection. Differences in motivators create tension over how resources like time, money, energy, and space get used in relationships. There's so much more to say about assessments, but for this tip, I hope it is sufficient to say that when there are differences in our motivators, it may not matter how good the sex is. All right, 2, beliefs. Again, a belief is a feeling of certainty that something is true. When 2 people in a relationship cannot agree on what they believe to be true, the relationship is in danger. Often people in a relationship assume their partner believes as they do, when that is not really the case. Oftentimes, beliefs are suffocated or sacrificed, which leads to resentment. Even rarer is the couple who agree to believe different things without letting those differences affect the relationship. That sounds good until day-to-day decisions like practicing religion, parenting, voting, or information consumption reveal unforeseen conflicts. Next, goals and aspirations. Ideally, both people in a relationship have imagined their own unique and individual potential and see the relationship as something that fits the picture. Maybe even assists, supports the pursuit. Usually, though, only one or neither partner in the relationship has declared their true goals and aspirations. A very common problem, quote, married with kids couples can have is, quote, whose career is more important, end quote, and all kinds of resentments that builds up over, quote, who has to watch the kids, and, quote, who gets to work on or build their career, end quote, and so many other tensions that arise when there's been no communication around compatibility of goals and aspirations. Right? I could elaborate on that in a minute. Let me just keep reading because I'm in a good rhythm here. Next, we're talking about compatibility here, and we're talking about rules or assumptions. Ways of doing and being are ingrained in us from childhood. Certain changes can occur over time after moving out and living on our own, but by and large, the way we do things is the way we do things. If I grew up in a house that always had people in and out, but my wife grew up in a home that represented privacy, it might create compatibility issues. If I grew up getting yelled at by my mom if I left the dirty dish in the sink, but my wife was raised to let the dirty dishes pile up until clean dishes were needed, then we may have compatibility issues. Next, capacity and willingness to commit. I was raised to believe that divorce was bad. My parents were together for 54 years before they passed 3 weeks apart in September of 2020. Their staying power was their pride, as many of their peers, including siblings of each, experienced divorce. As a kid, so many of their peers, including siblings of each. So I had aunts and uncles that both went through divorce, right? As a kid, when I would ask what divorce is and why people get divorced, my mom always answered in a way that put her and dad's commitment on a pedestal. I got to slow down and breathe a little bit here, Sue. Give me a minute. Other times, when complaining about my dad, my mom suggested that if either of them had ever made any good money, they probably would have gotten divorced. That it was their poverty that kept them together more so than their true capacity or willingness to commit. We'll never know. But I believe that some people should get divorced, sometimes because they never should have gotten married in the first place, but always because the capacity or willingness to commit has diminished. Some commitments truly can last until death do us part, and others are not as strong. It is important to help clients get clear on what, if anything, can displace our commitments or capacity to commit, or why some people are avoiding commitment or struggle with commitment issues. Next, finally, in the area of compatibility, book recommendations. The book I have recommended most often in my lifetime for many reasons, in addition to relationships coaching, is The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. And specifically for relationship coaching alone, I also recommend a book called Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendricks. I usually recommend that clients read The Road Less Traveled alone and with their read The Road Less Traveled alone And then, oh, and then the other one, getting the love you want with their partner. There are thousands of books on relationships, and I dare you to beat the two I just recommended. There we go. So now the third area. So just to take a deep breath for myself, we talked about attraction that brings people together, but that says nothing about compatibility. And then there's area, what makes people stay together? What's the staying power? Motivators, goals, aspirations, beliefs, assumptions about ways of doing and being. But of course, we're talking about capacity, the willingness, the capacity to commit. And then finally, what's the adhesive? What's the third thing I want to talk about when I'm talking about relationships? It's communication. So here we go. This tip is already longer than I want any of the tips in this book to be. And here I am about to start a sub-tip that I have a master's degree and 20 plus years of college level professorial experience with. Isn't that funny? Do you see how I laugh at myself all the time, Sue? Allow me to censor myself and simply list the briefest summary of communication knowledge I help clients develop for attracting, improving, or even terminating relationships. All right, first bullet. What is communication? People think that because they can talk and hear, they are good communicators. Most people think communication is getting your point across, but wow, is there so much more to it. Next, nonverbal communication. A brief study of the forms and functions of nonverbal communication can make us better producers and consumers of nonverbal techniques and strategies that improve overall communication. Listening. Hearing is passive, but listening is active. Listening is a skill that can be improved. Understanding purposes of listening, forms of non-listening, barriers to listening, and strategies for active listening, and the techniques of appreciative inquiry are all invaluable. Not inviolable, invaluable. Got it. Relationship tools. Next, critical thinking. The ability to suspend or challenge our own assumptions about what is true, false, right, wrong, civil, savage, clean, dirty, healthy, toxic, moral, immoral, etc. Rigid or dogmatic thinking rarely helps relationships. Like, no duh, right? Anyway, it's so funny how obvious all of this is, but how hard it is to do in real time when we've got a real relationship on the line, right? So funny. All right, persuasion. Learning how to construct persuasive arguments is the same knowledge that helps us detect illogical or faulty arguments. Knowing a thing or two about logos, ethos, pathos, and fallacies of logic will go a long way in healthy relationships. Content. There are 5 things I make sure my clients are communicating to their beloved, for it will help strengthen their relationships. Yeah, it will help strengthen the relationships if they are able to regularly communicate the following content. So there's an acronym that I have for this, FANGC, FANG. It's not even a word, which bums me out because I like acronyms that make a word. But FANGC is how I remember this. But here we go. These are things like you want to help your relationship out. You say, oh, communication is the key. Well, I'm going to give you 5 pieces of content that you need to start communicating inside your relationships if you want to increase the staying power, etc. Here we go. Forgiveness. Hey, any relationship of length will experience hurts along the way. We must be able to communicate forgiveness. 2, apology. Like with compliments I deliver during comp coaching, I always use the 3-step process, right? When making an apology to ensure its sincerity. I'm sorry for blank. I say that because blank, recognizing consequence. And is there anything else I need to own or understand in order to be forgiven? FYI, the 3-step works well with forgiveness too. Smiley face, wink, wink, nod, nod. Needs. Never assume your partner should just know what your needs are if you've not taken time to communicate them. Goals. There is nothing more valuable, perhaps in all of life, than a supportive spouse. Communicating what we are trying to achieve and why we are trying to achieve it is critical to getting the support we need. And finally, compliments. Always find ways to let your partner know what you admire, respect, appreciate, and value about them. Always use the 3-step approach for sincerity when possible. Wow. So here we go. I'm making some offers here. When it comes to assessments, you can send an email to info@getaklu.net with read the graphs in the subject line to get a code for 50% off our mini e-course on discs and motivators of behavioral assessments, right? So we have a little mini e-course, and if you want to get into it, I'll put the link up at some point. But the bottom line is what happens is you get a set of assessments, but you also get video, which teaches you how to read the graphs and how to understand yourself better and how to read other people. So we've got pre-recorded information about how to understand the graphs and how to decode the reports that come when you take your own behavioral assessments. It's more money to get me on the line to do a live debrief of your actual reports. So we want to automate some self-paced stuff. That's what we're talking about here is we're building an assessment funnel for people to be able to go, click, take assessments, watch a video, and understand, as close to 80% of it as they can get That doesn't require the expense of having me doing a live SWOT analysis or a live debrief, etc. So we want to make things as affordable as we can. If you've never done assessments, make plans. We're not the only place you can get assessments. There's like 3,000 psychometric tools on the marketplace. It's just Disc and Motivators is what I use. I've got a great vendor and a suite of all kinds of assessments that we can do, 360s and emotional intelligence and communication strategies and how do you work in teams and what kind of a salesperson are you. We got all of that stuff. And it starts with this funnel that we're going to make available to you guys. So you can get your own assessments completed, a professional debrief with one of our coaches, hours of content on how to read the graphs and the assessment report. So I'll put that in the chat or I'll make a banner about it. And then the other thing that we're going to start promoting, and I'm not ready to give links and everything this morning. I can't believe I actually got through reading the word for word tip in less than 30 minutes. But there's a confident communicator. I'm talking about communication is key, right? And so what is communication? Nonverbal, listening, critical thinking, persuasion, and the content that we need to make sure that we're communicating in our relationships. Those are pieces of a confident communicator program. We've got 8 modules that are ready to be consumed. And what is it? They're like, I don't have the pricing in front of me, like $200 per module, but you get all 8 for $297, like some sort of, like attractive or incentive-based pricing like that. So if you are interested in a link to 8 modules with a workbook, it's eight videos that are like anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes with a fill-in-the-blank workbook where I go deep dive on communication, nonverbal listening, critical thinking, in 8 modules of communication that will make you a more competent, confident communicator, whether it's relationships or sales or marketing or public speaking. You can apply it to anything, and it certainly applies to relationships. Just send an email with the subject line, confident communicator, and we'll get you a link with a code for 50% off that e-course as well. So there you have it, Sue. Oh my goodness, relationship tools. And very simple. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. But when we peel it back, it's just very simple. Attraction, compatibility, and communication. So when I've got somebody on the line and I'm trying to, how about your marketing? How about your sales? How about your outbound phone calls? How about your document production? How about, well, my relationship is, now I got to shift and get them right in their relationship, empower them around their relationships, right? Get them in action to make progress rather than, right? Those are the doors that I'll knock on to enter the party. Well, let's talk about what attracted you guys. How did you attract? Talk to me about attraction. Well, talk to me about compatibility, right? And then let's talk about communication. So those are 3 doors I can knock on to have very robust conversations with any client about relationships. And again, like I said at the beginning of the tip, I'm not necessarily trying to solve the whole relationship. I'm not trying to take the place of a marriage family counselor or a therapist or anything like that. I'm trying to get people willing to talk about it. I'm trying to get people a sense of empowerment rather than isolation or desperation or whatever the case may be. Let's create some insights. Let's create some breakthroughs. Let's create some ahas. Let's have some conversation. Let's be vulnerable. Let's make it okay to talk about these things before anything tragic or unwanted occurs. So it's not the end all be all. There's all kinds of other books. There's all kinds of other tips and strategies. But I'm here to tell you that this is an area of my life that I'm very successful in. And I feel rich, like abundantly rich with the relationships that surround me. Everywhere I go, I've got great relationships. I'm always invested in building relationships. And when I'm working with my clients, if there's anything that smells or sounds or seems like any sort of relationship issue, I've got those 3 categories that I can open up, like pop the cork and let things start flowing, which creates a sense of possibility and hope and enthusiasm and empowerment to take action, to read a book, to initiate a conversation, to write a letter to your spouse to get your thoughts on paper, all of these actions people can take to improve their relationships rather than just complain that they suck. Does that make sense? Or you follow? So we're not necessarily, sometimes we do solve the whole thing. One time there was a client that hired me for one reason and one reason only. She was a young mother. The baby was like less than 2 years old, I think. And they had a lot of these issues, the compatibility issues. The attraction was there. They smelled good to each other. They produced a kid, but lifestyle and interests and goals and aspirations and beliefs about right and wrong and how things should be, they were a mess. And so she was in purgatory because when she looked at the possibility of being a single mom and raising the daughter alone and having the daughter have to grow up without a father, it terrified her. And then when she looked at the idea of the daughter growing up watching her parents yell at each other all the time. She was terrified. And I got chills on my arm. Like I can't even stop the hair from raising on my arm and the chills, because that's real. That's a real. And so who do you talk to about that when they come to us for coaching? And that's the purgatory that they're in. That's, oh my God, I look this way and I'm terrified. And I look that way and I'm terrified. And I don't know what to do. Well, we're not telling them what to do in coaching, but we're facilitating conversations around attraction, compatibility, and communication to help unearth what the right choice might be. We shine a light on their choices and escort them to making their decisions. In the case that I'm bringing up, she actually found the courage to leave the guy, decided to go at it alone. And now when I spoke with her last, over a decade later, she's got a new relationship. Her daughter's thriving. She's happier as happy can be. And I'm really proud of myself. I'm really proud of the contribution I made to help her make a confident decision, because that's a really, really, really tough decision, because it's not just about her life. It's about her daughter's life, right? And that's the kind of value that we can bring to somebody's life if we've got frameworks and if we've got tools in our toolbox. And I got all kinds of other stories when it comes to relationship coaching. And people, I've been invited to weddings, because I help people get their shit together when it comes to relationships. Help them overcome the commitment fears. Or I've got a lot of success stories when it comes to relationships. One time, a client of mine had me talk to his son, because his son wasn't proposing to the girl that they knew that's the girl. And we can't tell him, but he's afraid. But that's the one. I know that's the one. And can you talk to our son for us? And I'm like, sure, I'll talk to him. What did I do? I ended up recommending The Road Less Traveled to help him see what his commitment issues were. Next thing you know, within 6 months, he proposes. The parents are happy. I get an invitation to the wedding after one conversation with the guy. So it's funny, but what a rewarding and fulfilling endeavor to help somebody with relationships. Sue, I'm going to stop talking. Yeah, I'll stop talking for a second. What do you got?
A few things. Well done getting through it, because there was a lot.
It helps that I actually know what I'm saying. I wasn't reading something that was like written by somebody else. It helps that it's.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, thank you.
I know, you live and breathe it. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you.
Couple of things that really stand out is the complexity of relationships, and what you offer here as a tip gives anyone, I think, an opportunity to go, okay, what can I look at that's going to empower me to make better decisions about the relationships that I go into? What do I look for? What do I need to be aware of from both a self-reflection perspective, but also others that you're interacting with? But I think even more than that, it really highlights how on earth do we expect ourselves to get through life in this aspect on our own?
Yeah.
We having someone that we can trust, that we can have as a sounding board, a coach, it's just so important.
Yeah. If the relationship is failing and you don't have somebody that you trust and respect and look up to on some level, right? Like somebody that's like, because I'm, it could be lonely, it could be miserable, right? And thankfully, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the miserable side. All relationships have their challenges, and Marianne and I, we met when I was 19, she was 18. And so one of our challenges that we met so young, we still had to grow up. And the challenge was, how does she get her individuality and I get my individuality? And how do we fend off a codependency? Right. And in The Road Less Traveled, one of the things it says is that, love is risk. Love is independence. Love isn't, don't climb your mountain today, come with me on mine. Yeah. And love isn't, I don't want to climb my mountain today, can I come with you on yours? That's not love. Love is recognizing that I'm on the planet for a reason. She's on the planet for a reason. She's got a mountain to climb in her life. I've got a mountain to climb in my life. And when the sun goes down and we can't carve out any more of our individual potential, individual purpose trail, now we retreat to a base fort and we energize and we share. we share with each other, we energize each other, we listen, we talk, we nourish, we rest, we laugh, we story tell, and then we wake up in the morning and we go kick ass again and our individual pursuits, right? So that's something that I learned in The Road Less Traveled. It's a book that I recommend most often for people struggling with relationships, because usually it's not the relationship that you're struggling with. It's that the relationship isn't ready for how much failure you've embraced on your own individual stuff. Or let me say it another way. It's not the relationship is the problem. It's that the individuals haven't gotten their own individual wherewithal and a readiness to sacrifice, to commit. A lot of times people get into a relationship hoping that the relationship will solve things, or the relationship will cover things up or make it go away. But what happens often is people aren't entering into relationships with this 100% commitment to their purpose in life, having chosen their partner as part of that plan.
Agree totally.
You follow?
Having gone through that situation, agree totally.
Yeah. What else comes up for you by way of comment, or what was there anything that stood out in particular? Was there any like really juicy nuggets in there? Like there's a couple of Klubi snacks, can't write 6 pages without some Klubi snacks in there, but I didn't stop to mark them to do a banner about it and put them up. But do you have any other feedback or reflections on what we've covered today?
Yeah, I think understanding the difference between attraction and compatibility, and some of these things I'm like, oh, I wish I'd known more when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I would have made very different decisions, but that's okay. Life is what it is, and we learn.
Yeah. Well, we're, the thing at this stage in our lives, right? The whole premise is, hey, get a Klu in 52 for coaches, myself included. So it's like you're consuming that as a consumer of coaching, or I wish I had this coaching when I was going through my relationship, but seeing you as a mentor in your place of work, right? As a leader, as a coach, right? From that perspective, can you shift from, ooh, I wish I had this, to, ooh, I can't wait to help somebody with this. I can't wait to facilitate this conversation and help people to these insights that lead them to better decisions in their relationships.
And that is just such. I look at youth. I look at my own kids.
Yeah.
And I want to be a role model. As from a parenting perspective, I definitely want to be able to role model a much better understanding and a deeper understanding of what really good relationships look like. So there's that aspect, but certainly from a mentoring perspective, looking at youth and go, oh, I don't want to see you going down a pathway that is totally avoidable.
Right.
By being more informed and having a deeper awareness of who we are, and giving yourself that space and time and putting in effort to understand some of these basics.
Yeah, I'm seeing there's a comment here. Charlie has chimed in. It was like maybe 14 minutes ago, but let me say hello to Charlie as I look at the comments there. I don't know how this, I'm not as familiar with, I guess he's chiming in on Facebook, and I just commented on YouTube.
Yeah.
Comment on all, I don't know how this, I'll figure out how I'm adapting the stream. But Charlie, if you're out there, we love you. And hello to you as well. Yeah, Sue. For me, like I said, it's all in there until death do us part. And my parents as the model, and they would always put their commitment to each other on the pedestal. But my mom admitted to me privately that if either of them had made any money, they might have divorced. So they were kind of, I grew up thinking they were stuck together because of poverty and a codependency, and which is neither of them pursued their potential, in order to just be comfortable with each other. Fine, to each his own, right? But to me and my wife, I knew right away, love means till death do us part to her. Like we talk, we're only going to get married once. I'm only going to get married once. So with Marianne and I, we were together for like 7 years. And then when I saw the codependencies and I saw all the red flags that we were building, I actually initiated a breakup at the risk of losing her. And we were apart for 15 months, which was very tough for me. Very, 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 very tough. Because I knew that we could be happily ever after, but I knew that if we built a mansion on top of quicksand, we'd fail. So I wasn't in a relationship to get a divorce. I was in a relationship to But I had to do my soul searching and travel the country and write in my journal and be on the road and, really soul searched a lot. And I came back from a long road trip, a 9.5-week road trip. And I said, Marianne, I want love in my life. That's what I know. I don't want to try to build my career, build my life with the scattered energy of a single dude. I'm ready to not sweat small stuff. And I know I'm ready to make the sacrifices and make the compromises and embrace all of the things that are not ideal in exchange for the greater good. Right. That comes from a really, and I remember telling him, like, you're my first choice. You're my only choice. If you're not ready yet, I have to understand that that's the chance I took. And I fought like hell to get her back. And all the cliches apply. If you love somebody, set them free, come back meant to be. And she made me work for it, as she should have, because it was unilateral. I understood for some reason. I understood these things when I initiated the breakup. She's like, what? What are you talking about? We've been together for 7 years. We're getting married. What are you talking about? And I'm like, we're going to get divorced if we don't commit to our individuality. And I know that I risk losing you, but this is a chance I'm going to take for the long haul. And now here we are. We got 3 beautiful kids, and we struggle and yell at each other like any other married couple, but we got it going on pretty good. We still cuddle. We still admire each other. We are a good team. We have a good division of labor because we understand what attracts us. But then the compatibility is, hey, that's your area because you're good at that. This is my area. I'm good at that. Last night, it was so funny. It was cute. We're like, hey, Marianne, do we want to plan a little family staycation before AJ moves off to college? And I'm like, hey, you haven't done it. I haven't done it. Like, do I? Because here's what happens. It's funny. Like, as soon as I start playing, she won't plan. But as soon as I start to plan, then she'll stop what she's doing and she'll override my plan. So I got to plan it just enough to get her attention, to let her control it. And then the thing will happen, and it becomes a game rather than a fight. It becomes a playground rather than right? Like, hey, do you want to do it or do you want me to do it? Don't tell me you want to do it just to tell me you need help doing it, because I'd rather just do it and let you do something else. There's 2 of us. Why are we both doing the same? I was telling Mary, I'm like, hey, you look on, for hotels. I'll look at Airbnbs. Why are we both looking at hotels? You look at this weekend. I'll look at that weekend. Why are we both looking at the same weekend? Let's divide and conquer, right? And this comes back to my desire for efficiency, and she's more into perfection and control, and I'm more into ROI. And so when we have different motivators, when we have different beliefs, when we have different assumptions, we have different behavioral styles, if I'm immune to that, it could trigger upsets and hurts and misunderstandings. But it becomes more playful, and I'm like, all right, I know she wants to control it. So if I initiate it, that'll get her off her computer doing this other thing, and then she'll come plan a vacation with me. And I'm like, I'm laughing. But, I mean, it's not always clean, right? Sometimes we annoy each other, but that's the good stuff. Like I remember quote Robin Williams in the movie Good Will Hunting. And I got to watch that with my son last week, and incredible movie. And, like the 2 professorial figures, Robin Williams and his buddy, the one went on to be an incredible math person at MIT, reached his potential, but you don't hear about any relationship or love interest for that guy. Math was his love, right? Whereas the Robin Williams character, when he was like, a great psychotherapist, but he went the love route, and he wasn't as successful professionally. So that's a thing that's up there. Like, hey, some of us sacrifice our career for relationships. Some of us, won't, and there's no right or wrong, right? But when the kid was resisting therapy and he looked at a picture on the wall, remember this scene? He looked at the picture, he's like, oh, you're hurt. You married the wrong woman. And the guy's like, there was an intense scene with Robin Williams said, don't ever disrespect my wife. And it's like a heavy scene, right? But then the next day they met at the park, and he's like, you read a lot of books and you can decode a painting and you can psychoanalyze me, but you never know what it smells like. You never know what it feels like. You won't know this. You won't know that because you're too scared to be vulnerable and let anybody in. But the thing that I take from that is that all of the stuff that sucks, that we don't want, the tweaks, the idiosyncrasies, it's the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff. Anyway, what else? Last call for comments, questions. This is a heavy topic. Thinking about my parents, thinking about my own relationship, thinking about all of the people that I've helped in the world with this. It's heavy. And as an empath, I'm not an engineer. I'm not an analytical. I'm not a mathematician. I'm an emotional, empathic, people person, heart-centered creature. So when I get into this topic, I'm all about it. I'm all in when it comes to relationships and the love that's required to come together and stay together. So last call for comments, questions on today's tip number 24 from Get a Klu and 52 for coaches, myself included. Thank you for being here as always, Sue. Last call.
Pleasure. I think there's just so much magic that's possible in really good relationships.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you could write a whole book on it, right? I just one tip. Are you kidding me? 6 pages. It's a 6-page tip, but let's, with the complexity that exists in relationships, let's take a deep breath. Attraction. How do people come together? How are people and why are people attracted to each other? Now it's usually because there's opposites. So those things that are opposite then create compatibility issues. If I do it this way and you do it that way, we may be attracted to each other. But now if we're trying to be compatible, we have to, are we going to do it your way or my way? Right? Compatibility issues, your belief or my belief, your way of doing it, the way you grew up or the way I grew up. The one that fits your goal or the one that fits my goal, the one that, has me watching the kids, the one that has you watching the kids, all of this stuff. Right. And then attraction and compatibility, but it's all going to fall apart without good communication wherewithal. So communication is the adhesive that keeps loving relationships together. Even if there is good compatibility, if those things aren't communicated, the relationship will be challenged. So there's so much more to say. Any other comments or questions? You just had so much magic. Anything else before we dismiss for today, Sue?
No.
All right, there it is. We'll close it out. Thank you again. Happy Friday. We'll see everybody next week for tip number 25 overall. It may not be as emotional as relationship and all of that. Let me just have a little preview. Oh, this will be a quick one. Financial tools. This will be a quick tip. Anyway, thanks as always for being here, Sue. You energize me by having somebody to interact with live. Thanks to those of you that I see some eyeballs every now and then on social media out there, whether you're watching on the YouTube channel, the Facebook channel, or on LinkedIn. Thank you for being with us. Leave some comments or some questions. Let me know if you ever want to come on into the StreamYard side like Sue does, especially if you're a guest speaker out there that wants to speak on any of the remaining topics that we have in the book. I want to hear from you, and let's make it a party. Everybody's invited to my Friday tip readings. Get a Clue in 52. Thank you so much, Sue. We'll see you next time. Mwah.
See ya.
Bye.